In the book, you talk about how so much of what we do is unconscious. You know, how we can get in the car and we can drive to a place and we can arrive at our destination and be unconscious of, okay, how did I get from home to this place? I don't remember choosing a route. I don't remember consciously saying, I'm going to turn right here. I don't really recollect that. Um, we live so much of our lives unconsciously. How do we make the unconscious conscious?
Yeah, it's a good question. And again, we start off from a position saying like it's good that we do that. Thank God. You know, what I call the autopilot is the way that we can move things in different parts of our brain because we only have so much capacity for what's called working memory. It's the thing we're conscious about. You know, if we're consciously thinking about the way we walk, we would never be able to do anything else. All the muscles involved, the balance, the movement, the perspective, our vision. There's so many parts that go into what needs to happen in our brain to simply take a step. And when you watch a toddler learning how to take their first step, it's visibly obvious. There's a lot going on here. You know, they're like all over the place. But then little by little, because they do it over and over again, it becomes habituated. And that becomes part of the autopilot. That goes back into a different part of memory. It's not what we keep in our forefront. So when we have patterns of behavior, not just simple physiological movement, but relationally, we have different patterns like being ignored, being rejected, being put down. That becomes habituated. You know, the first time you're rejected for something, you're going to have a whole eruption of emotion, of response. But that's not really feasible to keep doing that every time you get rejected.
I'm trying.
Well, what happens is it becomes part of that autopilot. And then we don't realize what we don't realize. So when we bring people in and we can have this blueprint and we understand, okay, number one, the first most important mark of your existence is that you were loved into existence. So right off the bat, you're talking about being rejected, but that is flat out contradiction to who you actually are. You're loved into existence. So any act of rejection is totally disordered. Now, if you've habituated your emotional responses to being rejected, we've got a lot to work on here. We got to bring that stuff out of the autopilot. I tell a story. I do some work in Haiti. I have good friends in Haiti, and I've done missionary work there for 20 years. And I'll never forget one of the most impactful moments was being out in the mountains. We brought some food and medicine to a mom who was way out in a little straw hut. And this chokes me up every time I think about her. She had a paralysis and a problem with one of her legs. So she lived her life on her side, on the floor. And she could only crawl around with her arms. And she had a son. And her son, who was 4 years old, walked around by crawling on the floor with his arms.
Wow.
And his legs were fine. So he learned what he knew from his mom. And he didn't know any better, but that's what he habituated. So the missionaries there, eventually there was an orphanage and they were able to take him and take care of him and they brought him out and they taught him how to walk. And he could totally walk great. He had no problem walking. And he could run back home and his mom was in tears because she knew what was happening, but she couldn't show him how to walk. So it wasn't even about her being bad or wrong or anything like that. It was just the way that it was. So what we have to do is we have a blueprint. We know people walk. You know, that's part of being a Catholic psychologist. Like I have a blueprint of who a human person is created to be. And if I have that blueprint and I see somebody crawling around on their arms, you know, I'm going to have to figure out, like, can their legs work? Maybe they just were never taught the right way to walk. Okay, let's pull them back. Let's open these things up. Let's change their perspective. Let's change their expectations. Let's teach them how to walk. And then we can, and they can. And that's the beautiful thing. So we have to have the blueprint. We have to have the rapport, the trust. We have to be able to step back from whatever that autopilot, habituated pattern of behavior looks like, and then slowly bring in new truth and new reality and help a person learn how to act and feel and think and operate in a new way.
Why are we so resistant to consciousness?
Consciousness, how do you mean?
I think if we're doing so many things unconsciously, or we're unaware of how the things we're doing are affecting people around us, and yet people try to bring that to our attention, I think very often we're resistant to that consciousness.
Yeah, there's a few reasons I can give you. I think biologically, neurologically, psychologically, the scientist will say it's a survival instinct. It takes too much energy, too many resources to change all the time, to be open to these new ways of looking at things. We put things into the autopilot because it's a way of preserving our resources. And it means that we have more openness towards the things we need, which might be to fight off a threat or discover something new or whatever it is. But if it becomes habituated, it's easier for us to navigate. It's like in our marriages, if I know a look on my wife's face means a certain thing, I can see the look on her face and I just assume it doesn't warrant a whole nother conversation. But if she gives me a dirty look, maybe it would be better for me to ask, like, did you just swallow something the wrong way? Because before it fires off a cascade of all my reactions to her giving me a dirty look, I better figure out, like, is that actually what's actually happening right now? So the immediate need is to preserve those resources. It's better for us to learn how to step beyond that. Then I think also emotionally, spiritually even, we're very threatened by not being in control, by not being good, by not earning, doing the right thing to earn God's love. This is like the deepest foundation. We're going back to that original sin, that original temptation to doubt the goodness of the Father. He's going to love us no matter what. So we build in the self-protective illusion that, of course we must be doing everything right. And really, the other part of us is breathing a sigh of relief. We're off the hook. We're not going to be rejected today. And then if somebody says, hey, look, maybe you could do something a little bit better, maybe a little different, that part's like, uh-oh, now we're in danger of being rejected again. Don't look at that. Don't listen to that. No, you're fine. You're doing it right. And so we go back into that safe space where we're perfect. We have nothing to change or work on.